On your social platforms. Ah. Okay, here we go. Welcome to Code Hangout number 99. Oh my. Who would have thought I'll make it that far? I certainly didn't. Alright, so today we're going to create a puzzle cheerleader. What I mean by that is basically a callout system. So when there's certain events happening during a solve, and maybe this is not the right puzzle to show this with, when there's certain events happening, I want to be able to send a message to the player. Like, hey, well done. Hey, you know, good break-in. Oh, you almost finished, etc., etc., right? And it's more a piece of tech that then will eventually be used also for things like a hint system, and tutorial systems and things like that. But I also, you know, want to have a bit of fun with it. And hey, Chameleon, how are you doing? And I'm also working on a educational version of the app for younger people. And I think for them, it would also be very, very helpful to have this kind of stuff. To, you know, just and I've always wanted to do also a bit of a educational version of it, like a hey, how to Sudoku type interactive book kind of thing. And it'll definitely be useful for that. So I have this puzzle up because I know for a fact that it has a 3 in a corner, and that's gonna be important later. But yeah, I think we can just use that. So what I'm gonna do is we're gonna open up. So the idea is that I'm gonna do this as an external plugin. So any kind of tech that is required to make this possible in an external plugin, I'll have to add, right? And in a way, it's gonna be a bit of a framework for other things. Like, it doesn't actually implement the hint system, etc. It's more like, hey, here's a framework where you can plug in your little piece of code that detects a certain circumstance in the game, such as they've fully marked a line and you want to call them Mark or whatever, right? And you want to make a sarcastic comment, you know, this sort of thing, right? So we're going to build this as a feature file. Let's get the last one, which was show scene cell. Oh, and by the way, this I have up because I'm going to use that as an effect similar to what we did with Valentine with the snowflakes. The last one I worked on the compact pencil marks, right? So we're going to create a new file. We're going to clone most of this over. And one of these days, I'm actually going to build the sort of get rid of all that boilerplate, right? And what do we call this? Shall we call it Cheerleader? Well, in the moment, these plugins are, you know, not technically external, but yeah, you could plug one of these, you could build one of these files, bring it in via Temper Monkey or whatever, however you want. You know, in the future, maybe you'll just press a button and add it, you know, because they're just files that are getting loaded in a way. You know, right now, they're literally just being loaded in here, right? But I'm kind of trying to move all my own work into these external files. And the more I do that, obviously, the more capable the APIs get, and the easier it'll be for other people to do the same thing, right? So right now, for example, the pen tool is not fully implemented as an external plugin because it needs support from the core engine. But I've done some refactors recently that will eventually result in something like the pen tool be completely external and no longer have any code in the core engine, right? That's kind of the goal. Where is... Oh, I did not double-click this file. So, this is... What shall we call it? I don't think I want to call it Cheerleader. I mean, it's an event system, right? Feature puzzle events. Maybe. And it's not really a feature that can be switched on or off. It's not like a user toggle feature. But for now, I'm going to implement it like this because it will make it easier for testing and so on and so forth. Feature puzzle events. All right, so adding feature. We won't actually need this for now. Oh. And we are not going to listening to change or init events. Right? None of that is actually relevant for this particular one. Actually, no, I'm an idiot. No, well, so the framework itself won't really be you know, disable. It's kind of it's going to be almost like core code, right? But for now, I'm actually gonna have a toggle on it because, you know, that'll just be the way to disable those callouts, right? But in the future, those callouts will be produced by sort of a module under this feature, right? It makes sense in my head. So, are we gonna put it under experimental? Yes, we're gonna put it under experimental, right? And we're gonna call this puzzle events, right? And it's going to be just a toggle, right? And attach and detach for now shouldn't do anything. And the idea is also that if you have 26 different events, you don't have 26 different low-level event listeners listening for puzzle actions all the time, right? We don't want that. Oh, I did not save that. Yes, we do want to save this as feature puzzle events, right? And then this needs to get loaded in under, we'll put it right under compact marks. That. It's not going to be per puzzle. This is separate. Has nothing to do with the puzzles. It's not going to be puzzle specific. And I do have a plan in the future that puzzles themselves can include code. How I'm going to secure that, I don't know yet. So it might not actually be raw JavaScript. It might have to be some sort of JavaScript-like custom language that is being evaluated by the engine, you know. But basically, I want puzzles to be able to implement new constraints in code by themselves, right? So basically fully define a constraint and other things, you know. All right, so now there should be puzzle events. We can toggle them on, right? And now if we go back in here, we can do things like do that. But I like that, you know, I haven't even started typing code yet and you're already trying to break it to pieces. Thanks for that. This is supposed to be a code hangout, not a code interrogation. Also, I've started really late today, so it's going to be a short session. So I'm going to try to do something interesting and useful in a very short amount of time. So yeah, so I'm listening to key events for the pencil marks actually to do, because I don't know if you know now, but you can do something like 1-9. Nope. You might have to enable that. Compact pencil marks on, right? So I can do 1 - 9, and it'll do this. And then I can, you know, remove the 5 and do this. Actually, no, I'm not going to change that now because I want to change it from a minimum of 4 to a minimum of 5 before it does ranges. 3, 4, 5, 2, 6, 5, 4. So it can only ever do one range at 4. That's interesting. I hadn't thought of that. Right? Because if I take out the... Oh, no, wait. I'm missing a 9. Okay, yeah. So we can do up to 2 ranges, actually. Anyway. So we don't need to do this kind of thing. So we're going to get rid of that. What we do need to do is we do need to listen to action events and things like that. So we're gonna look at another... Oh, this one is an old one. So we're not gonna look at that one. We're gonna look at the fog feature, which doesn't collapse correctly. Why? Huh. All right, so here, handle act, right? So that gets attached here. And there's handle... We probably need to have the full suite of handlers. Because we're gonna be very generic and let the individual events implementation decide what it needs. And the whole idea of this is that this will be the only event handler for all the events. Not every event is gonna have to do its own event listening. So we're gonna have a handle load and handle load and handle start. And I'm gonna just kind of mark them in here like that. And I'll do this and this. Load, handle, start. And then we're just gonna add the listeners down here. Oh, we had to do some timing stuff. Ooh. Interesting. Because it needed to change the order of the listeners. That's interesting. I hope I don't have to do that here. All right, this is under attach. Progress loaded, right? That's our load event. So we're not actually going to do that here. App on. I think we can just do this. Right. Same thing here. And do this here. Right. So we refresh this now. And let's we have a bit of space here. Refresh it now. We get an error. Line 42. Got a little too happy with copying and pasting here. All right. We have our action, load and start. Okay. All right. So the next step is to think of a bit of a infrastructure. So we probably need a so we need objects for the events themselves, right? So we need a puzzle event of some kind, and we'll have a list of puzzle events, and we need to register them. And then each puzzle event is fed, you know, these kind of things, and it has access to the app and the puzzle, etc., and it'll make its own determination if it should fire the event or not. And then the idea is the puzzle events will have a list of events of these event systems, these triggers. So we basically have an event trigger, right? But I don't want to implement it in sort of super crazy fidelity just yet. So I'm going to do a bit of a prototyping thing here. We'll do this.event triggers equals empty array, right? And then we'll have something like p dot add trigger. And we'll just push it onto this list, right? For now. Right? And then we'll actually just gonna call add trigger here with a demo trigger. We're actually gonna do this down here. So we're gonna do this dot add trigger, and we'll call it. Let's do the 3 in the corner. Let's do a 3 in the corner. We'll call it trigger. Whoop. 3 in the corner. Right? Whoops. Right? And up here, we'll just do something like that. Now, I'll probably later on the triggers themselves will be classes, yada, yada, yada. But for now, they're just going to be plain objects. I'm going to do that. That. And add trigger. Here we go. And now we're going to basically for each of these events, we're going to currently we're just going to naively loop through all the triggers, right? So we'll do something like and then we'll just do a blip blip. You know what? Actually, no. I'm gonna actually just gonna do this high level, because this probably needs to get rewritten anyway. So no early optimizations. We're just gonna do this, and we're just gonna check like I don't know trigger dot on act if on act action else null, you know, and we'll just do this for on load. Right. And on start. And then later on, we'll probably either pass in some sort of context event, you know. So this should, and we probably should have two triggers here. We should have a trigger null or test, right? And then we'll have a trigger 3 in the corner. So we have one that doesn't do anything. So we kind of test what it looks like when it doesn't have certain things available here, right? And for example, 3 in the corner shouldn't trigger on loading. So yeah, so this is going to be on, we'll have an on act handler. And it's going to be something like this. And we're just going to do that. And like this and this, right? If I do this, and I'll do this. And then, you know, simple question like, should it trigger on 3 in the corner if the 3 is wrong? I don't know. Probably what I'll do is something like, if it's wrong, it waits a little longer to see if there's a correction, right? And I could even include like a little sound clip of Simon actually singing it. That would be hilarious. Especially if it happens on stream. Especially if he doesn't notice. All right. So now we can look at this action, right? If, and we probably, and I'm just going to pre-fill this in to see what it, because if it loads in here, I don't know if on act actually triggers here. So we have add trigger, trigger. Okay, so this is the one, this is the other one. Okay, so it doesn't trigger on it fully being loaded, which is correct, right? So the 3 was here. We're putting a 3 in here. All right, and that triggers that, and that triggers that. All right. So now we can say if action dot type equals, and we'll just naively implement this. Value and action dot art equals 3. I think I have, I expect a string value here. I think so. And now we need to figure out, is it a 3 in the corner, right? So we'll probably want to look at the puzzle. So framework, framework.app.selected. No, that's on puzzle. Okay, puzzle.selected cells. Yeah. So we have that. So if selected cells dot length equals 1. Actually, do we care? We probably don't care, right? We probably. Oh, that's not right. No, we do. Well, yeah, because you could have multiple cells selected. So all we care about is that you're putting in a 3, and that one of those 3s is a corner cell. Excuse me. 1 second, let me just check the chats to make sure everything is working as it should. Are we running on Twitch? I didn't even check if we're running on, yeah. Wow, I don't know why the audio wasn't playing. So Twitch seems to be running. Oh no, Mark is expecting a outfit. Hey, too busy to play. Thanks for letting me know. All right, so we don't actually care if the length is 1. We care if any of the cells are the outer edges. And how do we detect that, including for puzzles that are 9x9? It might be prudent to only do this on 9x9 puzzles. And I think right now the size of the puzzle is stored in framework.app.puzzle.rows and calls, right? So we have rows calls, right? And then we'll have selected cells dot filter. I kind of want to filter by cells that are in the corners, right? So we want to do filter. But before I'm going to do filter, I'm actually going to just I'm just going to print out the data to remind myself exactly what it looks like. I think that's the... Let me add cell here as well. And we obviously need to check that the 3 is actually in the cell, so it doesn't trigger when the 3 is being deleted, right? So we have, that's 8, 8. Okay, and if I have multiple, it'll just print out multiple. All right. So we can now say something like... we can do something like this. Row call. We can do row equals. So we have 4 cases, right? So we have row. No, actually, we only want row to either be 0 or row equals rows, right? Framework.app.puzzle puzzle.rows 9. Rows minus 1, right? Rows minus 1. And same for columns, right? So if this is true, we're in business. So for example, if I do this and put it in a 3, one is true, the others are false. Exactly. So we basically want to filter by these, except one last thing, we want to also check what the current value is. So if we're in delete mode, and I don't think actually I can detect that from the outside, because that's determined by a value in the cells, right? So the replay data doesn't actually contain that information. So we actually need to look at the cell directly, right? So we have puzzle.cells 0.value to get prop get value. And I might completely be misremembering that. Prop get. Oh, normal. I need to normalize the naming convention. Yeah, okay. So, we basically want to do cell. Yeah, I need to actually access the cell here. And then we'll do this. Like that. So if I do this and press 3, false to true, false, undefined, 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 false, true, true, false. Now, if I do something like this and then press 3, they're all 3, right? And if I do this and I select these and I press 3, they're all 3. Now if I do this, if this is not 3 and I select these 2 and I press 3, it fills them in. Okay. So we basically need to also check our prop get afterwards, right? So we basically want to do this, and that equals 3. Now, if I'm typing in letters, it might actually give me a 3 as well. So that is something we need to double check. There is a way of detecting if we're currently in a letter mode, I hope. I mean, the letter tool certainly should know this, right? It should know this. Is tool with letters? No, we don't want to know if it potentially has letters. We want to know if there are letters actually currently being set. I think that might be in here somewhere. No. It's completely implemented externally? Do we need to actually look at the letter tool to find this out? Set letter mode. Did I really manage to implement that completely as an external plugin? That's pretty amazing, actually. I forgot about that. Really? Wow. All right. So now the question becomes, this information is actually not really accessible from the outside, is it? Because the tool is being initialized here somewhere. That is a good question. How do I know? I could also look at the rendering, right? It's gotta know what it's rendering. Because internally the value is a 3 for the cell. But it's obviously rendering a C, right? So, render prop toggle and prop default. Cell-010. If I just look at the cell here in our inspector, sorry, that's a bit small. So, the value is actually C. Then why does prop get return a 3? No, now it returns a C. Oh, wait, I'm an idiot. It's already working, isn't it? If I type in a C... Yeah, I'm an idiot. Okay, it's already working. It never even triggers because it doesn't pass this. So the action argument is C correctly. All right. All right, so this should be enough. So I put in a 3 now. I think I need to refresh. Three, false, true, false, true. Yes, okay. And we just need to know that it's more than 1, basically. We probably want to... Yeah, you know what? Let's not be silly. Let's do this in multiple lines, like that. We're just going to return that. And we'll probably turn that into a little helper function, right? So we can do something like const is cell 3 in the corner. And that's just going to be this. Boom. And let's see if we can just put that here, right? If I do that. Do that. I can just do this. And we can just do a filter. And we're just gonna stick that in here and see what happens. So if I do a Control A, press a 3, rows is not, oh, okay, yeah. Rows. We'll probably have to put that there. We don't need puzzle, and we don't need that, and we don't need that. Three, boom, and 3 cells, right? And if I go 2, if I say, okay, all of these are 3, we get 0 returns. All right, that's good enough for me. All right. Let have 3. Boom. So that should be our list. And then we'll do if have 3 is greater than 0. Then we'll just say that's 3. Oop. The corner. Boom. Yeah. And now we want to time out the trigger, right? So, I can start a timeout here. The question is, should it reset every time there's a new action? No, because we still want to record it. But it should reset every time that particular cell is modified, I think. Because if I don't, like, if I just, let's say, if I put a 3-second timeout on this and then say, okay, after 3 seconds, check if the cell still has a 3 in it. But maybe the user removed the 3, messed around for 3 seconds, quickly put it in again just to double check something, and then it triggers, right? So we kind of need to basically set a flag for the cell, right? And if that cell is manipulated again, we basically need to reset that cell. All right, so we basically need something like I'm trying to think what's the best way to do is, like, especially if the cell is like, we want to have a list of cells, right? But then each cell could have been set to 3 at a different time. So basically, what we really need is a list of cells and the times at which they were set to 3. So we're gonna have like a 3 queue, right? So we have a 3 queue. That's just gonna be an array, right? And then we'll just do 3q dot push f3 dot map cell. That becomes an array with a cell, and let time equals date dot now time, like that. And then we do console.log 3q like that. And then we need to be able to, you know, clean up that queue from time to time. We put a 3 here, and that didn't trigger. f3.length. All right. All right. Remove it. Add it. Boom. Now we have two values in the array: the cell and the time. And probably what we should do is, because now the question is, if I, let's say, if I put a corner mark on this 3. It doesn't do anything. And that's fine, right? Nothing else should modify this. Like even colors. So only if we are triggering on value again. Now if I set this to 2. Excuse me. So we kind of need to reset this. All right, so the idea is if the action argument is not 3, then we need to, you know, get that item out of the queue. And the reason I'm setting up this queue is because I don't want to trigger the event right away. I want to have a timeout, right? I want to have like a cooldown before we trigger some kind of special thing, right? And again, this is all just to test out infrastructure to make more complex interactions possible later on, right? So these might become primitives that we kind of composite. So now that the way I think about it right now is, we don't care about any actions that aren't value actions, because once a value is entered, anything else you do doesn't modify the value, right? If you try to add a corner mark, you know, like I can add candidates to the list, but they actually will not trigger, right? If you change the color of the cell, that shouldn't affect our timing. We shouldn't reset the timer if you modify the color. Only if you change the value, we might have to take it out of the queue, right? So what we can do is, first of all, if the action type isn't value, we can just exit. So we're going to turn that clause and bring this a little bit higher up. And we're going to put that up here so we don't have as much spam, right? So if the action argument is 3 and the cell is already in the queue, we don't want to re-add it to the queue, right? If the action argument is other than 3, we want to potentially remove it from the queue. So now the problem is, no, this is fine. The only time that's not fine if the cell has a given, right? So for example, let's reset that. If I enter a 3 here, no. If I enter the value of 3, we do get a trigger on that. But I think the length, it won't find 3 as a property because it will never actually get set on that, right? So we kind of need to, and I'm wondering if the cell already has a 3 if we want to eject it. No, we don't. Okay. So basically, we need to if it's not a 3, we need to expunge any cell that is in our queue and isn't a 3 anymore from our queue. So at that point, we're going to go through here. We're going to output it. And I think we can do, this can go higher. We can do, put that there here. Saves us a little bit. Right? And then we're gonna loop through this. And we'll basically say, hey, is the cell in selected cells, right? Well, actually, we don't actually need to do that because we can just check. We can just check the cells for having that property now. Right? So let's just do both and see what we get, right? Basically, we can just do cell dot prop get normal here, like that. All right. So let's put a 3 here. So that should put that in the queue as well. And now I'm gonna take that out of the queue. We're putting in a 1. So we've got a true and a false. The false is for includes in the selection. And the value is... So this one is included in the selection. This one is not included in the selection. But we only care about the 3, right? So if I do this and put in a 3 again... trying to think what would happen, basically. I think it would be the given, right? False 3. Prop get normal. Yeah, so this never got added to the list. Okay, so I think we can just rely on this. So basically, we want to do we gotta do a splicey, right? If we don't want to reallocate a new array. That's a bit annoying. But I think the best thing to do would be... the fastest thing to do would be to clone the array without those elements in it. And I think that's what we're going to do. In the future, we obviously don't want to reallocate arrays for these things, especially since these things can happen relatively frequently. We're going to just do this. Filter. And we'll basically say where cell.propGetNormal equals 3. Boom. And I'm almost thinking we could almost do this at the top. Right? What am I doing, right? I'm just trying to sort of think about this in a more sort of higher level sense. What I'm trying to do is I want to find out the most recent time a particular cell became a 3. And then we also want to say, hey, do we want to celebrate more than once, right? Or do we trigger the celebration only once? Like, if I set a cell to 3, I get the celebration. Then I think, oh no, wait, I made a mistake. I change it, play for another 10 minutes, make it a 3 again. Do I want the celebration again? I don't know. Maybe just one global celebration as well. I don't know. But for now, this should do something. If I get the right number of braces into the right places. So we've got 2 3s. Let's make that a 3. Now if I select these 2... Yeah, it's better if we start from a clear plate, because it doesn't take into consideration the initial state, right? So, and then if I make this a 2, these will be like this. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to map this. And we have a cell and time. We're going to map this to cell.propGetNormal. Basically the value of the cell and the difference to the current time. So date.now minus time. And this is how we're going to log it out, so it all makes more sense. We're just going to log it. Oops. We're going to log it once before and once after, and then we don't have to duplicate this code so many times. And we don't have to log it here. And we can see how it's changed. And we're going to add some sort of symbol so we know that's before and that's after. Reset. Boom. Select 3 corners. Set them to 3. Change this to a 1. And if I open these, it should give me this timing data, right? And now if I change this back to 3, we should now... have a different timing on that one. And if I do something like this, nothing should have changed. Sweet. And we probably want to do it like this. So, that async logging issue. Alright, so that should remove them. And now we actually need to trigger something, right? So we can trigger it in 2 ways. We can set a timeout here, where we're actually adding things to the list. And then when the timeout triggers, because do we want to do multiple timeouts, right? I guess what we really need to do is we need to trigger a timeout when the first or the most recent cell hits our particular timeout. If at the time of the timeout that cell is no longer there, then we can just start a new timeout for the remaining time to the next most recent cell, right? So basically, let's say if we say trigger time 10 seconds, right? So let's make it 10,000 milliseconds. So when a cell gets added here, the earliest it should trigger is that amount of time later. Hey, fellas. Hey, Topes. Has an hour already passed? Oh my god. I gotta hurry up. Alright. So, what we're going to do is we're going to set up a timeout here, because that's when we're actually setting the time. So, do we need to check if an existing timeout will happen? Yes. Because if there's a timeout on the way, it's going to happen sooner anyways. In the long run, probably what we'll just do is check every second, right? Or something like that. It'll probably be less expensive than or messy than messing around with this. So timeout ID. Right. So then here we're just gonna do if timeout ID equals undefined, set timeout. And we do want to bind this, right? We probably need like some other handlers here in inits and all this stuff. But what we'll probably do is actually let's add an init handler here as well. So if trigger dot on init, we'll do that. So then we can do an on init here. Like that. All right, and then we can do a handle time out. And then he'll do a, what do I call it? I have a utility function I want to use called bind handlers. And then I should be able to just use this dot handle timeout. This dot trigger timeout. I'm gonna make it a little shorter just for testing now, so we don't have to sit around waiting. But then I need it a bit longer so I can actually modify the board state before it happens. So reset the board. Do this. Enter 3 in the corner. Timeout ID is not defined. If and handle timeout should already be bound at this point. Like that. So if I put a 3 here, 3Q, boom, timeout. So then we hit the timeout, and we're gonna output the Q again. Oh, this higher up. We're gonna do this as well. And basically now what we need to do is we need to verify that we actually have a timeout. And if not, we have to reset the timer. So we're just actually going to do this. I'll loop through our recorded cells, right, in the queue. Not really a queue, more like a list. And then we'll just gonna output the information for now. I think I'm gonna add like a function is, oh, I have a function. I'm an idiot. So this, we should be able to just do this, right? So we'll do cell date.now minus time, and that should tell us if we actually are hitting our timeout somewhat accurately here. And I think we can do this function call also for our logging here. And let's replicate that down here. Fix our syntax here, and let's see what we get. Reset, clear that. Oh, clear that. 3. That's 3 in the corner. 3Q, true 0. Reading map. Reading map. Can read properties of undefined in 23. 3Q. So handle timeout this, I'm guessing, is not what I think it should be. Bind handler should bind it, but it might not be. It might not work on a non-instantiated object. Yeah. Or is it timeout handler? Bind handlers. Aren't we calling bind handlers here? Right, let's reset that. This. I'm not even sure how to tell if something is bound from the outside. On init, handle timeout, handle timeout. I thought bind handlers handles binds everything that's maybe it only works on the things that are objects with a prototype. I think there's a way around that. I'm pretty sure I've done that somewhere else. Where I passed in some sort of amalgamation of things. Alright, never mind. We're just gonna do it manually for now. But later on, this probably will be instantiated, so we'll just do this dot and this. That's all it really does. It just binds any function that starts with handle. So I can do things like this without closures and so on. Handle timeout equals this dot handle timeout, bind this, right? And well, we'll find out. If I put a 3 here, 1, 2, 3. Trigger, 5 seconds, right? So we get a true on this being a thing. We've got the 3 second, so the timer is larger than 3, perfect. And we have, we can do that. No, get rid of that. And we get that. Now, let's try it when that gets changed, right? So now I've removed one. What happened to our timeout here? I feel like it got removed somehow. I'm already seeing an issue because I need to listen to clear as well. So that's a little annoying. In fact, I'm starting to think there's probably a whole bunch of other things we might want to listen to. Like group start, group end, and a bunch of other things. It's almost like I want to do this check irrespective of whatever. All right, let me actually make this 5 seconds so I can have time to do this properly. So I'm going to select these two, put 3s in both, and then here I'm going to press 3 again to remove the 3. And when the timeout triggers after 5 seconds, supposedly, except it doesn't appear to ever trigger. Restart, clear, 3, 3. Timeout 243. Timeout ID is undefined. So the second in press shouldn't hit the timeout again. And then this one will be a false. Because the cell wasn't removed. Okay. So the clearing doesn't actually matter. It does matter. It does matter. So basically, we do want to do if... Ah, wait, no, I didn't press clear. Let me think. What happened here? We had value 3. Oh, because I pressed 3 again, but it resulted in a delete. Oh. But it doesn't figure that out here. Ah, because if you're pressing 3 again on a cell that already has a 3, that's a delete. All right, so we probably should do this clearing first. So really what we want to do is we just want to add these... man. I'm just starting to think. Basically what we want to do is we want to merge the queued cells and the selected cells into a single list, and then just check all of those if any of them are relevant, right? Except we don't necessarily need to do that, because when the timeout hits, that's really the only time where we need to remove. And we can... no, but we want to reset the timeout. That's kind of the point. And we want it to be able to put in the same cell again with a refresh timeout, right? So what we should do is we should first clear let me think. What we can do is we can add all of these in if they don't already exist. And then afterwards filter out the ones that are no longer relevant. Does that make sense? No, we want to filter them first. So if we do this first and then re-add them in, does that do what I want it to do? In other words, a cell that was removed and got re-added in, does it now get added in with the updated timeout? I think that's what happens, right? So we do want to do this first. We're going to clear out the 3Q first. No matter what. And we could be a little bit more selective up here as well. So first of all, we could say if action type. So only value can add something to the queue. Right? So we can bring that argument back in here. So only action type value can add something to the queue. But we can say dot value and clear dot includes. Those are the only ones that can modify anything at all. So if it's not one of those, then we return. Okay, so that should include the clears. Excuse me, I'm gonna sneeze. I don't know if that mute worked at all. So if it's not a value or clear, the cell doesn't get modified. We exit. Now we remove any cell from the queue that doesn't have a 3 currently. So if we press clear, this will sort it out. This will almost sort it out. And this is all to prevent 2 cells being in the queue at the same time, right? So now if selected cells... but at this point, we're not ensuring that the cell isn't already in the queue. So really what we want to do something is a bit different. I'm trying to think right now. Can I accidentally try to add the cell twice to the queue? I think so. So we want to filter that as well. So we want to filter by is 3 in the corner. And not dot find. And obviously if if I had just a plain area of cells and so on and so forth, it would make more sense, actually. And I think at this point, do I need the times on the cells? Yes, I still do that. But I could probably store them separately or attach them to the cell or whatever. But for now, this will do. This will do. I can put that in here just to... All right. So if I do a Control A and press 3, what do I get? I get 3 items in the list. And then when the timeout happens, we have an empty 3 queue. Excuse me. Also, why is the time 0? Oh, because it's the delta time, right? That's showing that it's showing there. So this 3Q is area 3. Why? Because the last time we logged it out, we got this, and then when we hit this, 3Q is empty. Is it because... Yes, it's because I'm not assigning 3Q here. So I'm going to do this. And then I think it should work. Oh, we probably want to reset. Nope. So 3. It gets us 3 3s in the corner, and then when the timeout hits, it's empty again. We pushing onto... Oh. There we go. Yeah, this is not the way to do it, but it's the way to prototype it, that's for sure. Alright, so now we're hitting the queue. Okay. Now if I change it, what happens? Yeah, it should reset the timer, right? Actually, we're gonna start with a clean slate. So what I want to do is I want to select 3, press a 3, make this a 2, and then make this a 3 again. And then timeout will hit. And one of them is ready to trigger and the other one is not. Except, what if I removed the second one shortly after? Because that's basically the idea. So imagine I remove this, I re-add this. The timeout hits. We have one that matches, but the time hasn't actually hit. All right, so let's play that game, right? So so we'll have let dt, so that's our delta time. Equals this. And this is our trigger, right? So now I'm gonna do if this and dt is greater or equal to this dot trigger timeout time out. I'm gonna do error so it stands out. Trigger on cell. We'll put the delta time here as well. The cell. And then what we need to do at this point is basically fire our trigger, whatever, remove the cell from the queue, and then restart the timeout for the next nearest time. So the idea is remove this, and add the 3 back in. Timeout hits. And what do we get? This dot trigger timeout is not a function, because it's not a function. All right, let's do it again. I gotta finish this soon. I got dinner to go to, and 3. So timeout hits, hopefully. So we've got our timeout, we've got a queue, we don't have a trigger on cell, but we're also not re-triggering. Okay, that was the wrong test because I haven't implemented that code yet. All right, let's just put a 3 in and wait 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1, and trigger on cell 517. All right, restart. And we will do a 3, 2. And we should still get a trigger on this one. Trigger on cell 513, but not trigger on the other cell. Right. And at this point, we basically remove the cell. So after that, we'll do basically something like this. Filter. And we'll do this is greater or equal to timeout. Smaller in this case. So we'll filter it by the cells that are in the timeout, and we'll do the same thing as below. We'll output the queue twice, before and after. And then we want to retrigger on the highest number. So we'll do man. I hate doing that. I hate doing max timey things. We should probably just... Well, we could assume that anything added below, at the bottom of the queue is gonna be of a lower time. Right? Because we're always pushing to the end of the element. So the oldest entry should be at the beginning of the queue. So it is a queue after all. Who would have thought? So if I do this and make this a 3 and then make it a 3 again, right? So what happens now? The first 3 triggers, because that's this one now. This one was removed from the queue and then added back in later, and it triggers on that cell. And here it should remove any of these cells. Let's also just do one of these. We don't have like race conditions and stuff like that. Now minus time. That's our delta time. If it's smaller than trigger timeout, we're filtering it out. No, we want to filter out if it's greater. The thing is, neither worked because nothing got filtered out. So let's just output the cell data here. We have DT cell, and then we'll just output both clauses because it's doing my brain in. So one of these is we'll do greater than and less than. And we'll have to create both scenarios. Right? So we'll do this, 2 and 3. So now when the trigger hits, we have 2 cells with different timeouts, right? So we've got this cell at 5,000 milliseconds with true false. So it's true on this and false on this. And the other one with 3,300 with false true. Okay. So at the end, one of them should be filtered out of the queue. But apparently not. Why? Because I'm not updating the local variable. I removed that code and I actually need it here. So that should do the trick. All right. Trigger and yes. And we end up with this. And then we basically say if dot length greater than 0, we'll do the timeout, this dot handle timeout, and we'll obviously do this dot timeout ID, yada yada yada. So this dot actually this dot timeout ID should be reset after it's triggering here. So we'll do that right at the top. This dot timeout ID equals undefined. So at this point, our timeout is triggered, and we ensure that only one runs at a time. And if there's another element in the queue, we'll just run it again. And we need to run it by whatever milliseconds are left. So we'll do, let's let time to next equals 3q0. We'll need time, and we'll need the delta from now. So we need to know how many milliseconds from now is this going to happen. So now minus. And then after that much, we just trigger it again. All right. I think the same test method will work here. So put it into 2 3s, make this a 2, make it a 3, and now that 3 should trigger later. So we'll have a trigger after 5 seconds total. After 3.6 seconds, it should trigger again. Time to next 3.6. Ah, yeah, no. It shouldn't wait 3.6, it should wait the remainder, right? So that's trigger time minus 3.6. So it's time to next should be this minus that minus the delta time. Okay. So got our 3s, 2, 3, and so we have a trigger after 5 seconds, and then we had how much remaining? 1.4 seconds remaining, and it triggered again. Okay, so that works. Now again, we probably want to limit the 3 celebration to just 1, but this will be generally applicable to all sorts of things. So this probably will, as a cleaned up sort of queuing system with a timeout, etc. You know, I'll probably create like a primitive that other triggers will probably use. And then once it's all done, is we want to actually fire the trigger. And to do that, we probably want to feed in a I mean, we could literally make it fire its own event, right? And then have this guy listening to those events. Or on init, we're just basically passing in an event handler, right? So we can do handle trigger. Something like that. We can do this, and then we'll do this dot handle trigger. And then on init, we'll pass in handle trigger. This dot handle trigger is handle trigger. And then on handle timeout, trigger on cell, we'll do this dot handle trigger. And I mean, we could pass in the cell, for example. But they could, I guess so, right? Oh, no. What did I do here? Like that. All right. Reset. Clear. Freeze. Free. All right. So what happens? We should get a handle act, trigger on cell, handle act, handle trigger. Right? All right, so it triggers here on this cell, row 8, column 0, and then later on row 0, 0. Okay, so that's working. Now, I don't really have enough time to finish this all the way, so I'm going to do a bunch of cleaning up, and then I'll see if I can throw something in, right? We're going to get rid of this. Gonna log out, get rid of like the basic ones here, the super spammy ones. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Don't need that. Keep that in. Get rid of that. Don't need that. Probably don't need that. Logging that out. Nope. Okay. Keep that. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. that. All right. We keep these in. And now let's have a look if we can pull this out. The last time with the snow, I modified an SVG with animations, and it had a bit of a problem, performance-wise. So much so that I had to add all sorts of code to deal with it on mobile phones and so on. Now I was thinking, if I have a static set of, let's say, divs with CSS animations on them, and I basically don't touch them, right? To generate an effect like that, maybe that'll be better, rendering-wise. I don't know, maybe the SVG will have a problem somehow. So this seems a fairly simple effect. So it adds a bunch of elements here, changes their size, and then their size and positions and what. And then actually... Okay, so they kind of did something very similar, and then they rely on CSS animations with 3 different effects for this stuff to come down. So the trick will be how to wrap this up in a very, very fast fashion. So what we're going to do is we're going to steal some CSS injection code from the other features. So we'll just check quickly how we used to do that. So it basically just did that on add setting. So we're just going to do that. We don't even worry about cleaning it up. We're just going to put that in. In fact, it probably should go under attach element here. Just gonna do that. Yep. And that's exactly the sort of thing that goes into the boilerplate later on. Confetti container. Oh, they're using 3D. Confetti container. So the body we don't really care about. Confetti. And I think this is all... Oh my god, that's just for the check mark, really? Yeah, I don't think we need any of the check mark stuff. Okay. So... if we take that here, stick that in our styling. And, you know, I'll probably would eventually tweak the effect quite a bit, but for now, I want to see if I can do something in the next couple of minutes when I have to finish the stream. Let's compactify that a little bit. There's a lot of weird blank lines in here. Probably do that, that, and that there. That. Oh, and this is SCSS, which is not very helpful. Can I change this to none? Can I use that? Oh, no. I think I need to just do that. No. Yes. That completely breaks it as well. Yeah. All right. Container. Now the perspective stuff probably needs tweaking. I hope I can get some kind of representative prototype effect out of this, so we don't have time to tweak. All right. And then we'll need to render confetti full setup elements. We'll just have a function call here. We'll handle trigger. We'll just do it in here right now. We'll do it live. So let's do something like that. Confetti interval. So it'll just generate a bunch every 3 seconds or whatever. Okay. Container element. So the container element is this dot element. So oops. We'll start with that. Go container element. That doesn't really L.this.L.style.position. Container element. Okay. This.element confetti. New confetti cursor.js container. No, we just want to stick that somewhere into the body, right? Document body dot and child container element. I think there's some issue with relative absolute positioning that this deals with. Let's hope that's not going to be too bad. All right, what's next? So, confetti element, we create a div. Confetti size, background. This dot element dot offset width. I think it'll be this. This dot confetti colors dot length. Okay. All right. We just got to get rid of all this. Is this? This is this. All right. Confetti animations. No, this. Confetti L. P.fire confetti. Mediocre of proper code here. Because I'm just gonna manually fire it now quickly, but we don't have to wait for it. We'll just do a on handle init, set timeout. We'll do this, and after 1 second, when we refresh, it should just fire right away. Boom, and then probably breaks immediately. 127. 127. Forgot of this. Okay. Let's find our confetti element. Should be here somewhere. There. Okay. So we have a confetti container. Confetti element. So I think we're not actually adding the confetti, which is probably happening here. And I think we need to add more than one, right? Oh, it's doing one every 25 milliseconds. Set interval. Confetti interval. All right, so that's kind of like a for each kind of thing. All right, so 1 sec. 1 sec. I'm gonna do something really dirty. Don't do this. And we're just gonna do this quickly, just to see if we're gonna actually see anything on screen. There we go. All right. Now what they're doing is they're creating one every 25 milliseconds. And after 300 milliseconds, they're removing that particular confetti. So every confetti is self-removing. And then the confetti interval, I don't think it's actually used anywhere else. Let's try that. I don't like this because it's very uncontrolled. But, you know, it's worth a try. So we'll do 20 per second, and then we'll each confetti We'll time out each confetti. That timeout. Remove timeout, I think. Isn't used anywhere either, right? No. Something like that. For 3 seconds. Seems like a long time. But maybe it's not this bad. Yeah. Now, obviously, we probably want to shoot them out like a confetti cannon from the 3 in the corner. So, the last thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to try running the confetti off the 3 in the corner. And I think 5 seconds is probably too long, actually. So, something like 3 seconds, maybe. We go in here. Reset the puzzle. Put a 3 in the corner. 1, 2, 3. And hurrah! And it would almost be enough if it just falls down and it doesn't necessarily even say anything. Obviously, if it shoots out from the 3, that would be great. I like the 3D tumbling effect. That's actually really cool. And I'll have to do some performance checking. But I kind of like that, actually. Let's do the last thing here. We're going to let interval ID equals. And then we'll do the timeout. Clear interval after 5 seconds. We do something like that. I mean, letting the confetti go on for 3 seconds is almost too long, right? But anyway, that's not even here. Neither here nor there. And 4, 5, gone. 5 seconds is almost too long. So if we stop generating after 3 seconds, because I think the last confetti still needs to clear the screen, so it'll be 6 seconds for the last confetti to be done. 2, 3. Yeah, that's actually really, that's kind of subtle almost, right? Do it again. And it works again. Now, internally, it's generating a whole bunch of rubbish stuff, so we want to actually clear all this stuff out. But for a proof of concept, that's not really too bad. Now, I have too much code in the trigger in here. So a lot of this stuff needs to be sort of normalized, right? So there'll be sort of higher level and lower level triggers, right? So then things can say, okay, I want to be triggered on values in cells, or I want to be triggered on timings, or I want to be triggered on things relative to the solution, and so on and so forth. So probably what will happen is we'll have like a hierarchy of triggers, right? So these, instead of listening to these low-level events, there'll be modules creating higher-level events, and then other things will listen to these higher-level events. So instead of listening on act, or on load, or on start, it'll listen on digit entry, you know, that kind of thing. And over time, we'll create a sort of infrastructure that becomes, that incorporates more and more intelligence, but still has low-level access, so that really high-level intelligence, like, you know, smart hint features, where you're kind of running a solver alongside the puzzle, and you want to say, oh, this person is trying to figure out this, you know, a Fistomophil ring, for example, right? That it can kind of do that. But then something like Fistomophil ring or set theory, like, hey, we can detect if somebody's coloring in rows and columns, things like that, you know? Or if somebody's coloring in parity, maybe we can detect that somebody has filled in orange and blue for the whole board, and figured or finished the shading of a particular shading kind of puzzle. So I think that's kind of, yeah. Now if I clear this out, oh, and I can't click on it because the confetti is on top of the board. But if I clear this out and just auto enter the solution, boom, I should get a confetti. Yeah. It's almost a bit too slow, right? But anyway, that's not really the point. Yeah. All right. I think that's it for today. This is more like an infrastructure project, so it's I want to use, you know, the 3 in the corner as a sort of little joke thing to get it started, but in reality, it's more about building infrastructure for more foundational systems that can do all sorts of things. And I'll probably actually trigger events onto the puzzle object itself, so we can listen on the puzzle object. And that's something maybe I'll try in a future stream where I say, okay, I can kind of configure a trigger, like a low-level trigger, and then I have these handlers, you know, it's like, hey, only trigger if a digit was entered, you know, and it gets cleared when a digit is cleared and so on and so forth, right? Or then trigger when a digit is cleared and then notify me when that cell is modified, right? You know, maybe even trigger events on cells directly, right? So if a cell value changes, maybe the cell should fire an event, right? Gotta be careful not to fire too many events around, because I can, you know, if I do something like this, like a control A, and then do this, you know, that's 82 cells. So 82 values got removed, 82 values got added, a whole bunch of lines got edited. You know, it could, what's the word? It could snowball very quickly into a lot of function calls. And we kind of want to be careful about that. Anyway, that's it for today. A bit of a shorter one because I started so late. Sorry about that. As usual, you can check out what I do on svencodes.com. You can support me on patreon.com/svencodes. You can find the app at SudokuPad.app. And obviously you can find me on various Discords. I'm on Puzzle Plaza, I'm on the Skunkworks one, on the 9x9 one, on the CDC community Discord. And usually you can find me there under SvenCodes. That's it for today. Thanks for hanging out. Goodbye, and have a good day.